20a, Chaf, Amid Aleph. We just finished the Mishnah. Mishnah said that you can only put meat or onions or eggs to roast on the fire on Erev Shabbos if they're enough time to have been roasted during the day. That means that they're finished, that they're done. So why are they on the fire? Well, they're still cooking a little bit. So bekama, how much roasted is required that it's considered done? And then you can leave it on the fire. So we had a problem of chitui. We said even according to Beis Hillel, that allows you to allows kalim to continue doing work. But even according to them, you have a problem that you might stoke the coals. So at what point is considered done that you're not going to continue adjusting the flame? So Amar Rabbi Lazar Amar Rav. I didn't realize that Rabbi Lazar was a student of Rav. Usually Rabbi Lazar, like we had yesterday, on the top of the page, Rabbi Lazar was a student of Rabbi Yochanan. Anyway, Rabbi Lazar says the name of Rav, if it's roasted the amount of the food of Ben Drusai. Ben Drusai is a term that's used for food that's either a third cooked or half cooked. It's Machlekes Rashi and the Rambam. Rashi over here says a third. He would eat his meat, mostly also would be considered raw, rear. And it could be he was a thief, he was a robber. It could be because he was always on the run and he didn't have time to let his food be fully cooked, so he would eat it like that. So that's considered basically edible enough, and after that point, you don't adjust the flame anymore. So once it's done to that amount, either a third or half, so then it's already considered cooked. Yitmar Nami was also stated by Amirayim in a different context. Amar Ravasi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Ravasi is taught in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Kolshu Kamaychel Ben Drusayim b'mishum b'shalei nachrim. Once something is cooked to this level, then you don't have an issue of bishalakum. See, bishalakum, food that's cooked by a non-Jew, has certain qualifications to make it forbidden. One is that it needs to be something that would be served at a king's table. Royal Shulchan Malachim, and which means an important meal. Not like cereal or something. Then the other thing is that it needs to be something that's not eaten raw, like I don't know, tomatoes and lettuce and whatever. So if it's cooked already by a Jew, and then a non-Jew cooks it, so the cooking was already done. It's already done. Sometimes they had, remember they had shilas about hot dogs. So then a non-Jew was making dinner or something for the kids, put up the hot dogs, and the Rav said, "What? The hot dogs are already cooked beforehand. I mean, you heat them up and you do all of that, but they're already cooked." So maybe it's Michael Ben Drusai. So if once it's Michael Ben Drusai, then you don't have the issue of Bishuli Nachrim. Yeah, the robbers eat the hot dogs on the run. Okay. Tanya was taught in a braysa. Chananya Imer Kol Shuk Michael Ben Drusai Mutala Shaisel Gabi Kira. Rafa Pisha in the group of Tuma. It's getting into a big sugya in the third chapter of Shabbos. Chananya is of the opinion that once something is cooked, Kameichel Ben Drusai, you're allowed to leave it on the fire, even if you didn't for us, even if there's no blech, even if you didn't cover the fire. In those days, it was if you didn't take out the coals or cover the coals with ash. Today, we use a blech to show that we're not doing the serious cooking anymore. So what are we learning? We have a brisa where Hananya says that if it's Michael ben Jasai, that's considered cooked enough where you don't need the blech. Okay, now we said,
I thought the purpose of the blech was to block the knob so you wouldn't increase and reduce the fire.
Yeah, so there's a machlekes. There's a discussion today. In those days, to increase the fire, that you don't touch the fire, is either you remove the coals from the oven, or you show that you're finished with it. They would take ash and cover the coals, and that's the way they would like hold it. I think they would get the coals underneath, and they could start the fire tomorrow, let's say. But they was finished with the fire for now, so they would take the ash and put it on top. So those are two possibilities in the olden days. Now the question is, how do you do a blech today? Do you cover the fire, or do you cover the knob? So, because the knob would be more comparable to the adjusting. And the fire is the more traditional way to covering the fire. I think Rabbi said we're supposed to do both, cover the knobs and the fire, I think, today. So that's where you're getting that. Okay. Daf Yomi is not a halacha share, right? I'm sorry, a niceness of pasta. The Gemara quotes the Mishnah that you can't put bread in the oven or cake on the coals unless it has a crust. Ibaylo. When it says it has a crust, it says that the face of it is crust. And Rabbi Eliezer Aimer Kadesh Yikruma Tachtan, that the bottom of it has a crust. So what is the Tachtan? Ibaylo. You see, it says chulu over here, etc. That's quoting Rabbi Eliezer, and the Gemara is discussing what it actually doesn't say. The Gemara is discussing the etc. Ibaylo. They asked in Yeshiva, Tachtan Heich the Gabi Tanner. When you say Tachtan, the underneath part, are you referring to the part that's attached to the wall? You see, they would take dough, throw it onto the wall, stick it on. They would stick it onto the wall. And then we're talking about with a crust would be the crust that's on the wall, along the wall. I guess it could be very hot, the wall. However, Rashi says that would be a chumrah. You have to wait till that part gets. Or maybe tachtan means because it's put onto the wall, so the lower part was closer to the fire. And maybe we're being lenient that once the lower part of this is crusted, so then you can already leave it on the fire. So that's a question. Tashema, the Gemara brings a proof. Rabbi Eliezer brings from a brisa. Rabbi Eliezer the bakim batana has to be crusted along where it's attached to the wall. How do you see that? I guess you can probably look at the edges and see that that part is crusted. Like, how do you tell if the pancakes are done on the bottom? You see it from the side. You can tell. Yeah. Okay. Mishal Shlanesa Pesach. We said that you're allowed to put the Pesach into the carbon Pesach. They had like a fire pit where they would put it in, and they would use a pomegranate branch to hold it. It was a straight stick. They would use it to hold the animal all the way from the head to the end of it. They would put it in, they would roast it like that. It says that that you are allowed to do right before Shabbos. We didn't explain why. So my time, what's the reason? Bnei Chabura is reason. Bnei Chabura is reason. Rashi translates shortly that this reason means charedim. They're careful. They're not going to forget. They're gonna do things properly. If that's not the reason, then you wouldn't be allowed to do it. But the master taught. We learned this a few days ago. Gadia bein sharik bein lei sharik shaperdami. That if it's a young animal, a kid, a young goat, so then you don't want to adjust it at all, because the air was not good for it. It would make it probably the meat would make it harder. The Gemara says hasam mintach achalei mintach. So over there, you wouldn't want to adjust the fire to open up the oven and all of that, because the animal was cut up, and the air was not good for the inside of the flesh of the meat. However, here the animal is intact. Doesn't matter if you stoke the coals and open up because it's encased inside the animal is together. That's the case. So then you need a different heter to be able to put this on Erev Shabbos. And that heter is because the Bnei Chabura is rizim, and they're not going to make a mistake to stoke the coals. The next part of the Mishnah said that they would light the fire in the Beis HaMikdash, just the beginning of the fire. However, outside the Beis HaMikdash, you have to light it up. It should be entirely burning. Where it says, Minani Mili, how do you know that you're allowed to just light a little bit in the Beis HaMikdash? That's where the Kayanim would warm themselves. They had a fire there that was there, the room that they slept in. Amar Rav Huna says, the pasuk says that you should not have a fire burning in all your dwelling places. You have an exception here. It says you shouldn't have a fire burning in all your dwelling places, but the Beis HaMikdash is not a dwelling place. That over there in the Beis HaMikdash, you're allowed to have a fire burning. So Maskefler Rav Chisda asks, 1 second. He's asking to Rav Huna. We'll have this twice today, or more than that. Rav Chisda and Rav Huna conversation. You just gave an exemption, not for Friday afternoon. You just gave us an exemption where you're allowed to light a fire in the Beis HaMikdash on Shabbos. This is not Friday afternoon. You light it, and even though it's not totally Quran, it's still good enough. Rav Chisda says, no, that pasuk is telling me a different exemption, that you're allowed to burn the fats of an animal that were offered on a sacrifice on Friday. See, on Shabbos you're allowed to do anything that's required for the karban. However, these things, they could have been done before Shabbos. They could have been burnt. What do you do with them if the Friday karbanos, that evening, the fats and the limbs are still there? Are you allowed to go and burn those? They were put, let's say, put on the fire. They didn't get totally burnt. Whatever, you have to move it around, put it back on, or it fell off, or something. So you're allowed to burn them. That's based on this pasuk. Why are you allowed to light a fire of Shabbos in the Beis HaMikdash when it's not fully Quran? That's because Kainim is Rizmin. That's because the Kainim are careful. They're not going to come to stoke it. Taisus discusses, are we talking about the Friday afternoon ones? Are we talking about the Shabbos? On Shabbos, really, you don't have to put it on the fire. You can wait till after Shabbos to put it on. And there's a problem because it says that there's other sources that say that the limbs from Erev Shabbos are not supposed to be put on the fire on Shabbos. Okay. Now we say begvulim kadesh tachas. Outside the base of Mikdash, it has to be caught on. The fire needs to be caught on much more. It has to be burning already. You can't just light it on Erev Shabbos the way you would do it in the base of Mikdash, because you may come to adjust it. It says it has to be majority caught on. It says, my Rabbi, what's the majority of a fire, of the wood? Amarav, Reiv kol echad v'echad. If you put logs in the fire, so each one of those logs needs to be majority caught on fire. That's the opinion of Rav. Shmuel says no. You don't need the majority. Rabbi could mean the majority, or it could mean a lot. Shmuel learns that it means a lot. It's not the majority of each piece, like Rav is saying. To make a fire, you have bigger pieces of wood. Today you have to know this from camping. Unless up north you have a fireplace. So we had as a kid we had a fireplace. So there was like some sort of a tray inside the fireplace. It was like a rack you'd put the logs on, and underneath you would put balls of newspaper or whatever. So you would light underneath it. It would. Those days they didn't have the newspaper. They had little twigs, little pieces of whatever paper-like things that would catch on easily, and then that would catch the larger pieces. So Shmuel's saying, once it's enough lit where the person doesn't say, I need more small twigs to get this fire lit. So once you're not saying that, so then you can leave it, and it's not a problem. Tana, Reb Chia l'siyui l'Shmuel. Reb Chia taught in a brisa something that's a support to Shmuel. Rashi is concerned about this statement. Let's first see what he says. He says, "Kadei shetei shall have a selam eila, v'lei shetei shall have a seila yidei davar acher." Regarding the menorah, it says that you're supposed to light the menorah. Kadei shetei shall have a selam eila, that the shalheves, the flame should be going up on its own, not through anything else. It means you don't have to keep lighting it. That you light the wick in the way that the wick is burning. It's on Hanukkah also they tell us that when you light the menorah, you light till the flame is going on, so you don't just pull back, and so you go from candle to candle, lamp to lamp. The wick is supposed to be burning on its own. So this is what Shmuel is saying, that once you light the fire in a way that it's burning on its own, then you can leave it. And Erev Shabbos, that's satisfactory. So what's bothering Rashi? That you have this in the second parak, and it's not taught by Rabbi, it's taught by Rami Bar Chama, and it's not a brisa, and he's explaining something else. However, Rashi then says, "Vani matzasi yaisa b'teres kayanim legabi menorah," but I did find it as a brisa. He found it in the Teres Kayanim regarding the menorah. Teres Kayanim is the Sifra. It's the Medrash on Sefer Vayikra. Leviticus. Teres Kayanim is Leviticus. So, but this is the Medrash on Vayikra. So Rashi says it is a brisa. Okay, and that's a support for Shmuel. Eitz Yechidi. If there's just one log, one piece of wood. Rav Amarei Vavyai V'Amila Brei V'Kefai. Rav says that it needs to be, the majority of the thickness needs to be caught on fire. And some say that it's the majority of the circumference of it from the outside. I guess it would be easier to catch the outside. Then it should be majority have been all the way through. Well, maybe it depends on how thick it is. The perimeter, majority of the perimeter. Amarav Papa Hilkach bin and Rev Avya bin Rev Kefir. Papa says therefore you need both. Kitanoi. This is really a machlekes tanaim. Rabbi Chia Amar Kadesh Yishchas Eitz Mi Malachas Uman. Rabbi Yehuda ben Basirim Kadesh Teichas Eish Misnei Tzadim. Rabbi Chia says that it needs to be that the wood is destroyed enough from being used as a tool. That means that majority of it is burnt. That means most of the thickness of it. And Rabbi Yehuda ben Basirim says that it needs to be from both sides. That would be the perimeter. So those two opinions is actually machlekes tanaim. Even though we don't have a proof, but we do have a allusion to this, a hint. It says, this is the prophecy Cheskel is getting. It's talking about the wood from a vine. It's saying, what good is the wood from a vine? What work can you do with it if the fire is burning from both ends? And the inside is already dried out. Nachar is dried out. What good are you going to get from this? Well, both ends are consumed by fire, and the inside is dried out. I guess is a support that from here on the fire is going to continue. It's just going to be totally consumed. Okay. Then it goes on to say the Jewish, or Yerushalayim rather, it was a prophecy about the destruction of Yerushalayim. V'ha'ach lefanav mevaeres. This was this new piece of Gemara. Yirmiyahu is told to write all the sins of the Jewish people from after Yeshio or something, and calls Baruch ben Neriah. He gives him the prophecy, and Baruch writes it on a scroll, all the sins and what's going to happen. Anyway, they go and they read it to the people, and everyone is scared, and it is, he ends up reading it in front of the king. The king doesn't care much about this prophecy, Yakim. And he takes the scroll, and Baruch and Yirmiyahu went into hiding already, and but the scroll ends up in front of the king, and the king just tosses it in the fire. And so it says, "V'ha'ach lefanim everes." There was a fire. V'ha'ach is some sort of fire holder or something, some sort of fire is burning in front of him, and he just tosses the scroll inside, and then he goes to find Baruch and Yirmiyahu, but they were hidden. My ach, what is the ach? Amarav achvana. It was willow branches. Aravis. Achvana is Aramaic for Aravis. We'll have that again today. Shmuel Amar Eitzim shenidlaku ba'achvana. Shmuel says this is wood that was lit one piece from another. That's interesting. Again, we have a machlekes Rav and Shmuel. We had this before, where Shmuel said, well, you don't need one piece of wood to light the other. And Rav said, no, it's the wood itself. That's interesting that it plays out again in the translation of Ha'ach. Where Shmuel says that Ha'ach is wood that lights another piece of wood. And Rav says that it's the type of wood. There was a person that said to the others, Man boy achvana? Is there anyone that needs achvana? And they checked, what was he selling when he was making that announcement? He was advertising achvana. He was selling aravis. Aha. So achvana is aravis. Okay, Amar Rav Huna. Kanem ein tzrichan roiv. When it comes to Erev Shabbos, and you're going to light the fire, how much of it has to be lit before Shabbos if you want to just leave it like that? So Rav Huna says, Kanem, if it's reeds, then they don't need to have majority burning. Because the reeds will, once you light them, they continue to burn. But if you tie them together in a bundle, tzrichim roiv, then you do need the majority. Because then you've turned it into a log, and when you light a log on fire, it needs to be a majority caught on fire. Garinim, if you're using date pits that you're lighting, ein tzrichim roiv, they don't need to be majority caught on fire. They burn well. But nastan b'chesalis, but if they're put into some sort of small wicker basket, and then it gets harder to light. So tzrichim roiv, it needs to be majority caught on. Maskefla Rav Chisda. This was a statement of Rav Huna. Rav Chisda asks Rav Huna, Adarab, Ifcham Estabra. It's on the contrary. You got it wrong. It's really, what you're saying is really backwards. Kanim, if it's reeds, then mevadran. Not necessarily will one reed catch on to the next reed because they're spread out in the area, in the fireplace. And so therefore, you need to have them all caught on fire. Ugdan, but if they're wrapped together in a bundle, loimavajan, then they're not spread out. So then you just need to light part of it. Garinim is the same problem. Mevajam, they're spread out. Just because one was lit, the other one isn't lit. So it's not going to catch on. And there's a concern, you might push it over. But nastan b'chisales loimavajan, but if it's put into a basket, it's not spread out. And once it's caught on fire, it will continue to burn. Okay, Itmar Nami, it was also stated. We're on the next page. Amar Rav Kana taught, Kanim she'agdan tzrichim roiv. If it's reeds that are wrapped together in a bundle, then you need majority. That's like the statement of Rav Huna. It has to be majority of it caught on fire. Lo yagdan ein tzrichim roiv. If it's not together, then you don't need the majority. However, by Garinim, it works differently. Tzrichim roiv. If there's just pits, date pits that are using for fuel, they need to be already burning all of them. Nastan b'cheiselos, but if they're in a little wicker basket, ein tzrichim roiv, then once it's lit, you don't need the majority of them to be on fire. So by the pits, he goes like Rav Chisda. By the reeds, he goes like Rav Huna. Tani Rabbi Yosef taught Abba Meduras ein tzrichim roiv. There's 4 types of fires that don't need the majority caught on. Today, you'll see this when it comes to burning your chametz, which maybe everyone in his own little bucket in his backyard or whatever. So those professionals will have already the what's it called, lighter fluid, that starts the fire. You don't need, if you use that, you don't need the majority that already burning. That's tested already. It works. So here it says ein tzrichim roiv shel zefes. Zefes is pitch. Shel gafris, you use sulfur. This is interesting. Shel gvina, if you use cheese. It's dried cheese. Yes. The Gra has a different girsa. Quotes the Rif. Kira. I don't know what that is. Maybe it's something from a palm, maybe. Michel Revav, or something that's oily, fatty. Those things are gonna catch on fire. Once they're lit, they're gonna continue. You don't need majority of it lit. Masni Satana, the Brisa was taught Afshal Kash v'Shal Gavava. Also, straw and stubble. The stubble the gvava is what's left in the field after you harvest, and the straw is what's left from the grain after you remove the grain from the stalk. So you cut the grain, and you have what's left on the ground, that's the stubble, and then you have the straw. So both of those, it's two types of straw, but both of those catch on fire right away, and you don't need rive. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Eitzim shel Bavel ein tzrichim rive. Rabbi Yochanan says the wood of Bavel, that doesn't need rive. No, Rabbi Yochanan wasn't in Bavel. So, but apparently he knows from the wood that was brought, or Ruach HaKodesh, or maybe they grew in Eretz Yisrael, Eitzim shel Bavel, in the botanical gardens there. He said that doesn't need rive. Maskefla Rabbi Yosef, something strange over here. That was Rabbi Yosef asked Rabbi Yochanan. I don't know. Maskefla Rabbi Yosef, Maihi. What is he referring to? Something strange. Are there any other girsayis there? Do you see anything? There's a new Gemara. Is it Rabbi Yochanan? Is it Rabbi Yosef? Is the first, my question is, if the first statement is Rabbi Yochanan, how does Rabbi Yosef ask him a question? Rabbi Yosef wasn't in Eretz Yisrael. Is it Maskif La Rabbi Yosef, or maybe just Maskif Rabbi Yosef?
Maskif La.
You have Maskif La, and do you have any other girsa there? Because it just sounds strange.
Not here. An art scroll.
Okay. So he asks Maihi, what type of wood is this that you're talking about? Wood from Bavel. Eily Masilti. If you're just saying that it's just slivers of wood. Said Hash the Psila Amru Lamadak Tzarch Shadik Bereiv Bereiv Hayotze Siltami by. You have even by a wick. Just the fact that it's small, that you break it into thin pieces. That doesn't mean that you don't need rive, because even by a wick, it says that if you're lighting a wick, you have to it has to be caught on the majority of whatever's protruding out of the fluid, out of the fuel. Elam Rav Yosef says shucha da'arza. It's some sort of cedar pieces. Rami Barab, we'll see in a moment, in the next Gemara actually, more about Shucha Darza. Rami Barabba Merzaza. Rami Barabba says that it's Zaza. And Zaza, I saw in one of the translations that it was a type of grass or something. Rabbeinu Chananel says some part of a pomegranate. Okay.
This dictionary says moss.
The Zaza is a moss? Let me see for a second. Interesting. What dictionary is that? Is that a Jastra? Oh, Talmud of Eily. I have to tell you that's it's so convenient, but I'm not thrilled with his translations. The convenient part is there. Okay. Hadran Allah Yitzias Shabbos Bli Neder. That means we'll return to the first parak. We start the second parak. Dr. Stein, you know this by heart probably. Bameh Madlikin, Ubamein Madlikin. Right? You can say this in your sleep. Nusach Ashkenaz, they say this Friday night instead of Kegavna. With what may you light, and with what can you not light? we start off discussing wicks, and we get to the fuels, the oils. In madlikin, you're not supposed to use lechesh. Lechesh, I saw one of the translations said cedar bast. I didn't know what bast was, but I looked it up, and it's apparently under the bark. They have these fibers in between the actual the wood of the tree and the bark. And when I looked it up, they were discussing making different types of ropes, and they were discussing old ropes that the Vikings would make, and they would use different types of bast wood, and that was from different trees. But anyway, lechesh would be this sort of these fibers that are growing under the bark. Of a cedar tree. Chaysen, the Gemara is going to explain, is uncombed flax. The process of making flax, we have in the Gemara Sukkah, is that you would take the making linen. You would take the flax plant, and you would soak it in water. Then you would dry it. Then you would beat it, crush it. Then you would get the fibers out, and then you would have to comb the fibers. So a lot of the process was done, but it wasn't combed yet. You're not supposed to use that. For wicks on Shabbos. Kelach is a raw silk. Psilas Eden is the willow bast. Same type of material, but you get from a willow tree. Psilas midbar. And not from a desert weed. Here's where you have the moss. Not moss that's growing on water. Eureka green, not the green stuff from the water. The Gemara is going to talk about that. Doesn't seem much like a wick. That's like just falls apart. But we'll see in the Gemara. Now we're switching over to fuels. You can't use pitch. You can't use wax. That's a little surprising, right? And kick. You can't use castor oil. And you can't use burnt oil. We're going to see what that means. Not fat. Different types of fat. Nachum Hamadi says you can use boiled fat.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
How come it says b'mem madlikin uv'mem en madlikin? First, we're talking about it. The question is, what do we like with, and what do we don't like with? Why does it start with all the things you don't?
Yeah. Yeah, isn't that interesting? Doesn't always do. The Gemara. The Gemara is not so careful with this in the Mishnayos, but even though we have a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos about Al Rishon, right? I think the Shiva Devarim B'Golam, you answer on the first one first, and Perek 5, Perek A, right? So you would think that the Gemara would be more careful. If it asks a question and it sets it up, you would go back to the first one to discuss the first one, like you do in Eily Metzias. Eily Metzias Shalai, Ve'elachayv Lahachas, right? Eily Metzias Shalai, and it goes on and it says the first one. That's the Eilu, by the way, means not these, but it means which. So it's like very comparable. Eilu could mean these or which. So Eily Metzias Shalai, which Metzias are his? Eily Metzias Shalai, these are the ones that are his. First one is the question. The second one, like B'mem Madlikin, Ein Madlikin. So, but it doesn't do it. It doesn't do it right. It doesn't set it up like that. So apparently, the Gemara isn't concerned about that. Yeah, I don't know. See, Tosfos just lets us know that the Gemara sometimes does it like that. The top Tosfos. Sometimes it doesn't. The question is when. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, the Chacham say I find it all the time, and it's just okay. The Chachamim say you can't use fat, chaylev, whether it's boiled or not. Okay, now we're going to go through what these things are. The first thing we said was a lechesh. We said was a cedar bast. So what is lechesh? Shucha da'arza. It's this piece of cedar. If you notice, right before the new perek, the last statement over there, what is the wood from Bavel? Amar Rabbi Yosef shucha da'arza. Okay, so we had that once today. Shucha, the Gemara asks, shucha da'arza eitz balmahu. That's a piece of wood. That's not a wick. The Gemara answers, ba'amra nisa de'ispa. Imra is wool. It's a woolly substance that it has. Okay, so it's that wool that grows underneath the bark. V'lei b'chaysin. We translate chaysin as uncombed flax. Let's see. Amar Rabbi Yosef ne'ur shel pishtan. These are pieces of linen. Amar Abaya says, 1 second, you can't say that. It says vaya chasim l'neuris, that the chasim will be for linen. Mechlal d'chaysim lav neurisi. That means that those are two separate things. I read the parentheses. Elamar Abaya kisna the dayak v'leinafetz. It's flax that was crushed, but it wasn't combed. So we translate it as uncombed flax. And that was the process. First they crushed it, then it would turn into these thin fibers, and that's how they would turn it into linen after they combed it. V'loi bekelach. We translated kelach as rough silk. Amar Shmuel. Shmuel says, Shaltinu l'chol nechusei yama. We asked all the travelers, nechusei yama, those that go by sea. Va'amri kulcha shmei. Amri li, maybe. They said that it's called kulcha. Rabbi Yitzchak bar Zira amar gushkara. Rabbi Yitzchak bar Zira says it's gushkara. Now, Rashi says that it's the cocoon. Beis hatelas. It's where the worm lives, and then they would comb it out and they would spin it. So the worm actually makes silk, right? But it also has a cocoon that also you can take apart. Is all silk made from the cocoon? No, they're making the silk to make the cocoon. But I think there's part of it that's if it's already into a cocoon, they would take it apart and they would use that as well. The problem with this is that it doesn't catch these things. They don't really catch on fire and they don't absorb the fluid properly. So they're always going to flutter. The flame is not going to be caught on properly, and we're not supposed to use flames like that, wicks like this on Shabbos. You may have to relight it or adjust it. It's going to bother you as it's going out, and you're going to move it. Ravin v'Abaya v'Yasmi kamei the Ravna Nechemia achvei deresh galusa. Okay, Ravna and Abaya are sitting in front of Ravna and Nechemia. Rabbana Nechemia. He is the brother of the Reish Galusa. Apparently he's a wealthy man. Chazi davelavish metachsa. They see that he's wearing metachsa, which is silk that's made from the kelach. So it's cocoon silk. Amalei Ravin Abaya, Hainu kelach detana. Ravin says to Abaya, oh, that's exactly what we learned in the Mishnah. Look at that. That's kelach. Amalei, he says to him, Anan shira paradna krinalei. We call it shira paranda. Well, it's a little bit unclear what Abaya means. And is he referring to kelach as shira paranda? Taisves discusses this. Pirish Rabbeinu Tam, that kelach is called shira paranda, but tachsa is not. Tosfos says, apparently, the Gemara says that after the temple was destroyed, there was no more shira paranda. The shamir went away, and also the shira paranda went away. So how could this fellow be wearing it? However, the Ri says no. He says no, that Abaya was talking about the metachsa, this fellow's clothing. And he says, when it says that it went away, it doesn't mean that it totally went away. It means that it wasn't common. Okay. Meisvei, we have a question. You say that kelach is shira paranda. One second. It says, Hashirayim va'kelach v'asrikin chayavim betzitzis. There's other types of material other than wool or linen, according to this opinion, that are chayav and tzitzis, smachlekes. If other material is really considered a beged. We learned from tzaras that a beged is what's considered a beged, tzaras and the beged, it's a material that's made from wool or linen. Well, here it says, according to this opinion, that shirayim, which is silk, and kelach, which is silk, and tsarikin, which is a type of silk, chayavim betzitzis, all of those are chayav and tzitzis. Well, tiyuf to the Ravin. Here you see, Ravin was claiming that kelach is shirayim, kelach is the silk. Here you have, it's listed, it's itemized separately than silk. Well, Iba is saying shira l'chud v'shira paranda l'chud. We could answer that shirayin is one type of silk, but shira paranda is the kelach. It's a different type of silk. What are you saying, Avraham Nassim? I can't. The Gemara is not discussing what is allowed. Oh, so we're going to figure it out. That's what you want to say. The Gemara is going to let us know what is allowed by telling us what's not allowed.
I'm just saying, as a follow-up to what Moshe said, that so far in the Mishnah we never even listed what is allowed.
Right.
And so far in that first half a page of Gemara we haven't listed what is allowed. So I'm just hypothesizing that maybe everything is allowed with the exception of the items listed in the Mishnah. That's why the Mishnah doesn't go into what is allowed.
Uh-huh. Does the Mishnah, Dr. Stein, does it then say, is there a Mishnah later that then says, no, it just keeps going, Ein Madlikin. Ein Madlikin be this, Ein Madlikin be that. It doesn't.
No, there is.
Is there a Mishnah later?
Yeah,
Aaron?
Yeah.
It says Madlikin be something?
No, at the end, you see on Chav Dalet Amid Beis.
Chav Dalet?
Right?
Uh-huh. But we don't actually have a Madlikin be, like...
Yeah, I think it might be the opposite of what our resident Cohen was saying. Because how do you say you could light with everything? There's no such thing. You could light with grass. You could light with
so it's saying
wine.
You could light with everything but.
With every material that's used typically for lighting. I mean, obviously you're not going to light with a plastic toy.
So I think it's the opposite because Lebaskana, we come down to basically what do you have available? Olive oil for fuel. I mean, you have a few types of fuel. So maybe you say the opposite, that the list is so long for things that are questionable and not available to you because of what Rabbi Smith mentioned before. So we exhaust that so that you boil it down to what's the bottom line, perhaps.
Interesting. Okay.
By the way, you see this in Maseches Shavuos. Also, just like Maseches Shabbos starts Shtaim Shein Arba, Maseches Shavuos starts Shtaim Shein Arba, and then it goes into all the Tuma for 2 prakim, and the Gemara asks, why do you go into Tuma when it's kind of like Rabbi Druin's question? You said Shtaim Shein Arba, and you started with Shavuos, and then you talk all about Tuma for 2 prakim, and then you get to Shavuos. And the Gemara in Maseches Shavuos says we exhaust it. We want to get it out of the way.
I don't know if that's not going to answer it here.
Because this is longer. I hear you.
Leib psila seidan.
While we're here, could I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Is this a list of items because they're difficult to ignite or because they're difficult to maintain the
The
flame?
main problem is maintaining.
Cool with it.
The main problem is maintaining.
Maintaining.
But there's a Shabbos concern.
Okay, thank you.
V'lei b'psila se'idan, and not with, we translated that as a willow bast. Achvana, it's the willow. We had that before, earlier today. It's the second time. Ravan v'Abaya habikazli b'paksa detam rurisa. Ravan and Abaya, they were earlier at this fellow's, the brother of the Rish Galus's house. Now they're together. Ravan, by the way, was a traveler. And they're together at the valley of Tamrurisa. Chazinu hanu arbasa. It's with an ayin on the side. They see these willow trees. Amalei Ravan Abaya hanu idan. That's the idan. That's the psilas idan. Titnan amalei he eats balma. That's just wood. Who? Kalaf. They peeled it off. Achvalei amrenisa de beni beni. They saw the woolly substance that's between the bark and the trunk. When I was looking this up, this vast, they said if you peel it off, make sure you don't peel a whole circle around the tree. You have to you peel it vertically, not horizontally, because if you peel the bark around the whole circumference of the tree could die. So don't try this at home. And not with a weed from the desert. Savra. In the Gemara that I looked up, it said Malayan. I know that's a type of oil. They have like a Malayan oil. But this is a type of herb that, it's from the desert. You're not supposed to use it as a wick. I don't know how he knew it. I saw it in the Steinsaltz. Maybe he knows it from the French. Urtia. I don't know if anyone has the Steinsaltz there. Okay, v'lei b'yuraika, and not with moss. Maihi, what moss is this? Eily, if you say uchmasa dacharitzi, if it's the moss, that it's the darkness that's on standing water. If ruchim, that's just it's brittle. It just comes apart. You can't. That's not a wick. Elam Rav Papa uchmasa da'arba. It's the darkness, the moss that grows on the ships. That would get like very thick. It would turn into. You can probably peel it off. And you can make it into slivers or something, and that you could use. You would think that you could use as a wick. It tells you can't. You would think this was a fuel, right? Like the oil. You get oil from that or something. It's not. It's so far we're still dealing with wicks. Tana hisif aleim shel tzemer. The Brisa says that they added onto this wool that you can't use v'shel sar, also other types of hair that you can't use as a wick. Tani didan. So why doesn't our Mishnah say that? Tzemer mechavitz kavitz and sarach ruchim yichrach. It didn't bother saying that because the wool shrinks when you light it and the hair gets scorched. All right. V'lei bezefes. You can't use pitch. Zephes, what's pitch? Zivsa. Shaiva, what is that? Kirusa. It's wax. Tana adkan pasel psiles. Until here we're discussing the wicks that are no good. Mikan beilach psil shemanim. From here on, from the pitch and the wax, you're dealing with the oils. Versus pshita. That's obvious. You're not using pitch as a wick. It says shaibetz shrichelo. No, the wax part is necessary because ma'odatema lepsilas nami lechazia. You could have thought that they used to make wicks that they would cover the wicks with wax. The wicks with wax, like we actually have that. The floating wicks. There's a little wax around it, and you could think that maybe you can't do that for the wick either. No, for the wick, you can do that. You can coat the wick in wax. Okay, Amar Rami bar Oven. Atra, which is tar, psulta de zifsa. That's the waste of the pitch. Apparently they get the pitch from a type of tree. Shaiva is psulta de dufsha. The wax is the waste of the honey. What are you trying to tell me? The difference is that if someone that's selling wax, he can give him he can use the waste of the honey as well. Yeah, Taishas explains, the Gemara was concerned over here that we really know what these things are, so why do you have to tell us? Earlier, we also gave definitions, and we didn't say, why are you telling me definitions? We said, because earlier we didn't know what they actually meant, but over here we don't know what we know what these mean. So the definition is coming to tell me that if someone sells it, you can consider it that item as well. The waste of this product is considered that. It's considered wax or whatever. Yeah, it leaves us with a question: why are we allowed to use wax? I think the Mefarshim say that it depends if it's a liquid wax or a solid. I think a solid. I have to check that up.